A director who was impressed with his work in both animation and live action, and who I think deserves a lot more recognition, is Rob Minkoff. There's a good chance he worked on movies you really enjoyed, and he has certainly proven himself with his ability at telling heartwarming and imaginative stories. Minkoff got his start at Disney, where one of his first assignments was doing in-between work on The Black Cauldron. He was then asked to contribute character designs for The Great Mouse Detective, and was then promoted to being a supervising animator on Olivia, the unmasked girl who seeks Basil's help. He also worked as a character designer for Hyperion Animation's The Brave Little Toaster. Among his contributions to the animated films being developed at Disney around that time, he even dabbled in songwriting. Minkoff co-wrote the song Good Company for Oliver & Company, which Oliver's new owner performs for him. He also worked on the animation for Ursula in The Little Mermaid and was involved in the pre-production for Beauty and the Beast. Following the success of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Disney and Amblin decided to produce short films starring the titular bunny. Minkoff, who already shown an interest in directing and was even considered for The Rescuers Down Under at one point, wound up directing the first two. Tommy Trouble more than proved he could emulate the classic Looney Tunes style of comedy and continue on from what Richard Williams had accomplished in the movie's opening sequence. It's a hilarious short filled with brilliant side gags as Roger rushes baby Herman to the hospital and all kinds of hijinks occur. The second short, Roller Coaster Rabbit, brought the character's antics to an amusement park, and the result was yet another fast-paced and energetic cartoon that found so many clever and funny uses for this setting. He then directed a short film titled Mickey's Audition, which was shown at the Disney MGM Studios theme park. This was an amusing short that showed how Mickey got his big break. It even featured cameos from Roy E. Disney as his Uncle Walt and Michael Eisner. This proved to be a great display of his talents directing a live-action film, and thanks to both Mickey's Audition and the Roger Rabbit cartoons, he was asked to direct the Who Framed Roger Rabbit sequel, but it was ultimately never made. He was instead assigned to help with the production of an animated film at Disney titled King of the Jungle. That would then evolve into what we now know as The Lion King, but not before some significant changes. George Scribner was the original director, who was then joined by Roger Allers. Disagreeing with the creative decisions being made by Allers and the rest of the production team, Scribner left, and that's when Minkoff was called up to serve as his replacement. Minkoff really wanted to play up the drama of the lions and the conflict over the Pride Lands, and worked with Allers to create something epic and large in scale, while also brilliantly incorporating the songs by Elton John and Tim Rice. The Lion King succeeded on all levels, thanks to its memorable set of characters, clever use of Shakespearean themes, and having the necessary emotional stakes. The film was actually seen as more of an experiment within Disney rather than an obvious slam-dunk success, but thanks to everyone involved, The Lion King was able to wow audiences and has since become regarded as an animation classic. After The Lion King, Minkoff left Disney with the intention of directing a live-action feature next. He found himself with a number of offers, and at one point he became attached to an adaptation of the Stephen Sondheim musical Into the Woods that was being produced by the Jim Henson Company. He then read M. Night Shyamalan's screenplay for Stuart Little and was immediately interested in doing it. Columbia Pictures had gotten the rights several years earlier, but many different writers struggled to adapt E.B. White's book about a mouse with human parents. Shyamalan was the person to finally crack it, and under Minkoff's direction, the movie wound up a very sweet and funny film about family. The film was also an impressive example of a computer-animated character interacting seamlessly with real actors. People think these kinds of hybrid films merely involve having the actors talk to thin air or a tennis ball and then plopping the CG character into the scene. However, it's actually a very tricky process, involving a lot of preparation before filming, including getting the lighting just right. Stuart Little complicated things even further by having scenes where he's talking to a real cat, and so the filmmakers and trainers also have to make sure the cat is looking at the right place. Because Snowbell the cat also talks in the movie, the visual effects artist had to animate his mouth, moving to the dialogue spoken by Nathan Lane. I've often found that live-action animals with CG talking mouths often look off, but Stuart Little is one of the rare exceptions where the effect works. Minkoff also came back to direct the sequel, which I think is just as good as the first movie. Stuart Little 2 added a villainous falcon, and Margalo, a yellow bird who befriends Stuart. The sequel featured even more action than the first, with Minkoff pulling off some incredible scenes of Stuart, Margalo, and the falcon flying through Central Park. The Stuart Little movies are delightful and charming, and were able to take source material that appeared unadaptable and bring its mouse protagonist to the screen. Minkoff became briefly attached to some other live-action films around this time, mostly adaptations. He was one of a long line of directors who considered making a live-action Jetsons movie. He discussed directing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory at one point, and was also attached for a time to The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Eventually, he directed a film adaptation of the popular Disney ride The Haunted Mansion. This movie has gotten flack for completely understandable reasons, but Minkoff's passion for the ride is still evident on screen. Watching the behind-the-scenes featurettes on the DVD, it's clear how much work he and the rest of his team did to honor the ride and its sense of atmosphere. He just had the tricky task of being required to put that into a typical Eddie Murphy family comedy, and I think most directors would struggle with that balancing act. After working on the martial arts film The Forbidden Kingdom, Rob Minkoff decided to direct something completely different, an R-rated heist comedy titled Flypaper. The premise of the film involves multiple robbers who find themselves holding up the same bank. The film jumps between their perspectives and the hostages. They try to figure out the next step in the plan. Meanwhile, Patrick Dempsey plays a customer whose actions confuse everyone around him. While not all the jokes land, there are a decent number of humorous moments, and Minkoff is able to balance the large ensemble of characters at his disposal in the various turns the plot takes. I actually don't think Dempsey gets enough credit for his comedic abilities, and he especially shines here, along with Tim Blake Nelson as one of the bank robbers. Flypaper got a minuscule release and is easily the most obscure movie in Minkoff's filmography, but I found it an enjoyable watch. A project Minkoff had been trying to get off the ground for years was a film based on the Jay Ward characters Mr. Peabody and Sherman. He originally tried making it for Sony as a live-action CG film, but nothing came of it. He then pitched it to DreamWorks Animation, who announced the film all the way back in 2006, even before they acquired the rights to the Jay Ward library via their purchase of Classic Media. Minkoff decided to focus on the dog and his boy relationship with the central characters, and created a very funny time travel escapade. The movie has a lot of fun with the historical figures and settings like the Trojan War and Renaissance-era Italy, and the Peabody-Sherman dynamic is nicely portrayed throughout the movie. Minkoff's admiration and understanding of the characters comes through, and he and the artist did a superb job of translating them to computer animation. Around the time he was developing Mr. Peabody and Sherman, Minkoff was pitched Blazing Samurai, an animated homage to Blazing Saddles set in Japan. He suggested that it would work better with animal protagonists, and then became involved as a producer. The project also had the support and involvement of Mel Brooks, and this was not even Minkoff's first association with him, as he previously directed Brooks in Mickey's Audition, and the comedy legend also voiced Albert Einstein in Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Blazing Samurai had a difficult road to the screen, especially when the original animation studio and then the distributor filed for bankruptcy. Thankfully, he was able to find new financing, and Minkoff became one of its co-directors to help bring it across the finish line. Paramount Pictures even acquired the finished movie, which was released as Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank, although I personally prefer the original title. As a huge fan of Blazing Saddles, I personally enjoyed the film and got plenty of laughs out of it, whether he was doing a variation on the classic joke from the original film or did a new gag. The meta humor worked for me, and Minkoff, along with co-directors Chris Bailey and Mark Kotze, brought the required energy and charm. Throughout his career, Rob Minkoff has been involved in so many worthwhile productions, and he's someone whose name I'm always happy to see in the credits, whether as a director or another role entirely. I always look forward to seeing what he directs next and seeing where his creativity takes him. Thank you for all of the delightful entertainment you have brought us over the past 30+ years, Mr. Minkoff.